welcome to Ed, a podcast about the teaching life. This is Conversation 76, and I'm your host, Shane Lawrence. Ed is a proud member of the Alberta Podcast Network, powered by ATB. And this week, I am joined by Tara Martin.
Hey, Shane.
Hey, how are you?
Fantastic. And you?
I am doing okay. Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I'm feeling it this year. I'm feeling it.
Yeah. It's kind of that time of the year, I think, when everything just feels super stressful.
Yeah, it's that. I've never felt this tired before. I've never felt this tired before. I'm just give me a bed. I want to sleep for like 2 days.
You probably could.
I probably could. But anyways, this is not a therapy session. So let's
No, bummer.
At least not my therapy session anyways. So thanks for coming on the show. And why don't we just start with basic introductions? So who are you? What do you do?
So I am Tara Martin. I am an educator, author, speaker. I always tell people that I'm a coach at heart. I was an instructional coach for a good chunk of my educational career in the school system, and absolutely love that. I just love helping people realize all of the awesomeness that they already possess and helping them stretch it to the next level. And so coaching has just kind of gone with me like in every role that I'm in. I've also been a district administrator, and currently I am working for Dave Burgess Consulting. I am their media and communications director. So it's pretty cool because I told you I love coaching. I kind of get to just amplify the awesomeness of our authors through media creations, through talking to districts that are wanting to start book studies and kind of helping them guide them in a direction that they feel like they're going based off of these awesome books that we have put out there. So I just get to do a lot of cool things. I started out as an elementary teacher and ended up spending most of my career in the school system in elementary or middle school. And now I get to work with educators all around the nation of all levels and students too. I do some student assemblies. And so I really, really love doing that. I've done some recently with middle schoolers, and I've just had so much fun empowering middle schoolers to be the best version of themselves. So that's kind of me in a nutshell.
Yeah. Is it a prerequisite when you're working for Dave Burgess Company that you just have to be like this explosive ball of energy?
Possibly. I think I'm only there. So they have Dave and Shelley, and then Wendy, who is our director of operations, and super awesome at that. And then they have me. So I don't know if that's the prerequisite, if I'm setting the standard, but Dave is a ball of fire.
Yes.
So possibly.
Yes. I mean, I've talked to Dave, I've talked to you, I've talked to several, pirate authors, and everyone is just like, just huge.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
I think it kind of comes with the pirate territory. I think you're right.
I guess certain personalities just tend to kind of push your fate into a certain area, a certain direction.
Agreed. We are we call ourselves a family. I really believe that when we're at conferences or we speak at similar conferences, we're always finding our pirate family.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. And you say you kind of have this coaching attitude, and this is something I think kind of it's unusual for me. I'm not familiar with like learning coaches, teaching coaches, all this kind of thing. It seems to be really common down in the States. Can you just sort of flesh that out for me? Because here in Canada, we don't have those things, at least not where I am.
Totally. So what I worked as was an instructional coach. And when I became a district administrator, I was an administrator of instructional coaches. So I trained them, helped them to work with their staffs and do what I had done for 8 years. And so an instructional coach is basically, it's like a sports coach. I mean, the greatest thing about being an instructional coach, you're not tailored to one curricular area. So I worked mostly with elementary teachers, which means that you don't know every single content area perfectly, right? But you do learn how to to ask great questions, to listen, to learn. So when you're talking to someone, you're listening, you're finding out what is their passions, what is it that they're striving to do with these students. And then you're guiding them through their thought process until they get to a place where they're like, yes, I'm going to do that. And I'm going to do that tomorrow with these kids at this hour. And I'm hoping for this result. And so when you finish the conversation, you really just are like, okay, should I come back and check on you in 2 days? Or do you want me to come in and observe the lesson like while you're doing it and see how it's working? And so we can chat about it again. But basically, you are just brainstorming with educators and helping them to find the right formula for their students in whatever area that they're working on. And sometimes you coach them to like better themselves professionally. Maybe it's a goal that they've always wanted to get their doctorate. And you're like, hey, I have some connections up at the university. Let me help you out. Let me make some introductions through email and get you started on this process so you can reach your goal. And so it's just like any great sports coach. You take their awesome talents that are already there and you help them to use them in a way that's going to help them professionally to grow. And it's also going to help the people that they serve, be it kids or if you're coaching principals or whomever you're coaching, to help the people that they serve to do better, to reach their goals. And so it's a matter, I really think it's a way of thinking, and it's also a way of communicating that makes the stellar coach from the good coach.
So it sounds to me like you would agree that everyone could benefit from coaching.
Oh my gosh, yes. I mean, yeah, it's just like I do. And as a teacher, I wanted a coach so bad. And they were like, Tara, you're soaring over there. Like we have teachers that like, cause in the district I was in, my first few years of teaching was an inner city school district, low socioeconomic. We had some teachers that were struggling with that, and so they would push to all the coaches, like to the teachers that were struggling. But when I moved to the district I last worked in, everybody got coached. Like the coach was available for anyone. And I love that because you're not just helping people that are struggling. You're brainstorming with people that want to go to the next level. They're trying to cannonball in on something new. So I think anyone can benefit from coaching. I mean, it's another mind, and it's another person to bounce your ideas off of and help you. And it's also somebody to help hold you accountable. Because I think we think about a lot of cool things and we just think about them and talk about them. So if you have somebody to hold you accountable, you can go in and say like, hey, you got this. I'm going to be working on this. So you hold me accountable to this. And so we become like coaching each other, like coach the coach kind of thing. Right. We're going to hold each other accountable for chasing our dreams.
Kind of like a support group. It's like, you don't go jogging alone, right? You go with a friend because then they can be like, hey, where were you? That kind of thing.
Exactly.
Right. So can I turn around to you for a second? Do you have a coach? Do you have someone who's coaching you now?
I don't really have a coach necessarily, but this world of business is different. Like learning the media and the communication side of things is very different for me because I'm used to being in the field. So I've got the educational part of it. And then I need to figure out like, how do I amplify these awesome things these teachers and principals and educators out there are doing? And so I would say Dave is probably most likely my coach, just because he helps me to know a better way to get that out there. Dave and Shelley both. I mean, they both have learned that world a little bit better. So they take what I love, educating, empowering teachers, empowering students, and they help me find the best way to amplify that. Like I usually have some really great ideas and they kind of bring me back to reality. Like this would actually work a little bit better. Try it this way first.
Right.
So I would say they're probably like my coaches.
Yeah. So it's more like just looking for mentorship rather than, just sort of, I'm thinking of a lot of
accountability. Yeah. I don't know. Like when it comes to dreams, I would say my husband probably does a good job of helping me with that coaching piece, like asking me a ton of questions and also holding me accountable. Like, hey, did you pitch that book that you really wanted to pitch? And I'm like, no, not yet. So I think no matter in life, though, you need to have somebody. I do have one grad school professor. I call her my life coach.
Yeah.
And any big decisions I'm ever going to make professionally, I always bring them by her because she is my multiplier. I mean, she just like pours gasoline on my fire like all the time. And she never tells me no. Like whatever it is that I'm chasing, she never puts a blanket on my fire ever. She's always like, yeah, you need to go for that. And here's what I think so what are you going to do next? And she kind of helps me line up some next steps. So I would say Dr. Devin might be my life coach. So if I had to have one of those.
Right on. I love that. Gasoline for fire. I love that.
Oh my gosh.
Man, one of the things that's just really been sticking in my head, I saw a graphic on shared over on Twitter about teachers and how they, the image is of a candle that's personified, like, so it's, human candle, whatever you want to call it. And it's the teacher, and they're going around the classroom and they're lighting all these other little candles sitting in desks. And the sentiment is that teachers consume themselves to light the fires of others. And I take issue with that. I hope I don't consume myself down to a nubbin just to, light my students' fire. But I love the idea of gasoline for fires. Like I'll be a gasoline pourer for my students and for the people I work with. That's just way more cool too, right?
It's way more cool. I wrote a blog about it, my gasoline pourer. Mm-hmm. And I think you need to have those in your life. I call them, Liz Wiseman called them multipliers. Mm-hmm. Whatever it is you want to call them, you need to have those people that you walk up to and you say, hey, I want to try this. It's like this wild, crazy dream, like seems impossible. And they're like, you got this. Like you have everything it takes to make that happen. So let's sit down and talk about like, what could you do next that would be a step in that right direction? And then next, and what are some time bounds we can put on this? That's what coaching, kind of puts you in these time constraints. Okay, so you're going to do that by March, and then you're going to try that by June. And then by December, you got this, and I think we need those people in our lives, and we need to be that for the people that we serve, because we can do whatever we set our mind to. We just need to make a little plan and kind of get it out there.
All right, we'll get back to me and Tara in a second, but first I want to tell you about Otherwise. It's a podcast created under the auspices of the Ribbon Rouge Foundation. It's a variety podcast dedicated to empowering diverse communities living on Treaty 6 territory by sharing some of the stories of their lived experiences. The team behind Otherwise is made up of artists, activists, youth, and civically engaged Edmontonians who want to highlight Edmonton's ethnic, linguistic, and cultural diversity and bring about positive social change. Among the hosts are Ahmed Nomadic, Edmonton's poet laureate, community builder Karen Tang, and Morinike Olashebikan, founder of the Ribbon Rouge Foundation. You can learn more and subscribe at otherwiseshow.com. All right, let's get back to me and Tara. I love that. Not teaching in a silo, actually bringing other people in with you. And there's so much wisdom in the building. I mean, the other day I had an issue with some students, and I was just literally had no idea what to do. And I was walking down the hallway and I just saw one of the people I teach with. I'm like, hey, this is what's going on. What do I do? And they had great advice. And I was like, oh, okay, good. Awesome.
Agreed. In our PLN, how did I've only been on Twitter for 2 years. Like, I don't even know how I survived without them. Like, they bring so much fuel to my fire. Every time I get on there, I get some new ideas. And not only that, I just get encouraged to just cannonball in, and do something.
That's the second time you've used that word now, cannonball. Tell me about cannonballing.
So cannonball, you guys call it something different in Canada, don't you? Like
I don't know.
Or maybe it's Australia. But a cannonball is like when you run on the diving board and you jump really high and you grab your knees.
Oh yeah, no, we do that in Canada. We cannonball in Canada.
Y'all cannonball. Okay, fantastic. Yeah. I think it's Australia that calls it bomb dive, but whatever you call it, it doesn't really matter. Uh-huh. You're jumping all in. You're like becoming immersed, right? Mm-hmm. And I think I talk about this theory in my book. And you can't just tiptoe in the shallow. You can't just swim in the shallow and hope that, when you want to come up for air, you can always touch. Like, that's the safe place. And yeah, if you're a great swimmer, you need to move on. It's time to like run and to try something new. And so there were times I tell the story about me as a little girl at the city pool with my dad. And I wanted to cannonball so bad. And he was the best cannonballer ever. And so I was like, gosh, I want to do that so bad. But I just couldn't get up the nerve because I was too afraid that I wasn't going to be able to touch the bottom and come up for air. And my dad's like, you can swim. And so when I'm telling this to teachers, I'm like, you can teach. Like, you can try something new because you know how to teach, So go over there, climb that ladder with purpose, run and jump. And when you get in, guess what? You're going to swim. And it may not be awesome. Like sometimes we belly bust and sometimes we are fighting for air and we swallow a little bit of water. There's things that happen, but you're going to swim to the top. You're going to get a big gulp of air and you're going to swim over to the ladder and then you're going to jump out, and you never know the impact of your splash, right? So when you try something new, when you're innovative and you just jump out there and you quit thinking about, is the temperature of the water just right? What's the depth? What's this? What's that? Forget all that. Just run, try it, and let it be an experience. I mean, the kids are going to learn. They're going to learn through the messiness in the process. You're going to learn. And you're also going to, with each jump, just be more encouraged to go jump again. Before you knew it, when I walked in the city pool, I dropped my towel and I went straight to the diving board and I cannonballed until it got dark, because I knew we weren't going to get to stay there that long, and I wasn't messing around in the shallow. Like, I already knew I could do that. I wanted to jump and jump and jump and try to make the biggest splash I could possibly make. And what's cool about it is other kids would look around and they're like, wow, that's the best cannonball ever. And you're like, wow, did you see my dad? He displaced water out of the pool. But it didn't really matter to them because my splash was making an impact. And so I think when we are doing some cool stuff in our classroom, the teachers around us are checking things out. The kids are like, wow, have you seen what we're doing over there? Like, you wouldn't believe it. But your splash, ever so small, it's still making impact on these kids. And it's also making an impact on your colleagues. And the more we try new innovative things, the easier it gets to want to keep trying them.
So can I dig into this metaphor a little bit more?
Oh, please do. I love it.
So, I mean, I think what you're talking about here too is modeling. I mean, the kids see us doing the cannonballs and then they're going to want to do it.
Totally.
But let's just, let's take our cannonball to, like, say, a cliffside, and we're not sure if there's rocks down underneath the water. Then what?
Then you should probably test that out before you jump. I don't know that you should jump if there's something dangerous, right?
Yeah.
I was always using this metaphor with the city pool.
Yeah.
One of the things I didn't really talk about is, the dabblers. I feel like there's always, so in your situation, if there are dangerous rocks underneath, I mean, it's not worth risking your life to try something new. Right. I mean, I'm not really into that. I really want to live and I want to see my kid graduate high school. But, but I will say, you could go down and test the water. You could go down and see, get a feel for the depth of the water and then do it. Mm-hmm. But what happened at the city pool, one of the obstacles that wasn't quite that dramatic, but it happens to us as teachers, was the dabblers, the people sitting along the sideline, and they're just sitting, dangling their feet in the water, and their hair's perfect, their makeup's perfect, and they're just making fun of everyone that jumps, right?
Yeah.
Those girls?
Oh, yeah.
And so they were criticizing, really, that's your best splash? I think I saw your bottom when you went down, you had a wedgie or something, they're just cruel. Mm-hmm. And I think you have to get to a place where the critics don't get the best of you. You realize that, one, they're not jumping. So why am I taking their advice? Because they are dry. They don't even know what it feels like or is like. And they're not making a splash or an impact. Mm-hmm. So why are we listening to them? And then two, I kind of got to this attitude that I was like, man, I'm going to splash the dabblers so big that it messes up their hair and they want to get in with us, kind of thing. And I think that's an obstacle you can overcome. I'm not really so sure about the other one, but that obstacle of critics is something we face every day as educators. Mm-hmm. And you kind of have to push through, and you have to say, one, I'm not going to listen to their advice. They're not really trying this. They're criticizing hurtfully, destructively. And two, I kind of want to just splash them so big that they all want to get in. And we have this collective cannonball that we literally displace the water out of the pool. So I think ideally, just trying to get everyone to jump in.
Reminds me of my favorite quote, which my saxophone teacher told me back in high school. And he said, if you're going to make a mistake, make it loud. Exactly.
Why not? Well, that kind of reminds me of this quote I just recently wrote about a blog. Whitney Houston wrote this song, The Greatest Love of All. Mm-hmm. But she kind of talks about how she never found a hero in her life, like someone she just really wanted to be like. She had to be her own hero. So she learned to like not walk in the shadows of other people, and just, if I fail, if I succeed, I'm going to do it because that's what I believed, And I love those lyrics because I think that's true. Like, you just have to get out there, believe in what you're doing, and learn from it, because you're not going to get it right every time.
Yeah.
But you can learn.
Sorry, go ahead. Did I interrupt you?
Yeah, well, we can learn something new. Like, everybody can learn something new. And I think that's kind of the cool part of the process.
Yeah, absolutely. It comes back to just letting your students fail and letting yourself fail.
Yeah. So I'm interested to know your thoughts on, I hate to turn the
No, turn them around.
over. What are your thoughts on the rocky bottom? What would you say?
Well, I'm always kind of one of these people who's thinking, when I get presented with anything, I'm always thinking about the edge cases, but what if this and what if that, right? Because, I've got students that, even given all the support in the world and given all these great ideas and all the opportunity and me cannonballing in front of them, will do nothing. Those kids exist. They exist. And
right.
I have yet to encounter, a bullet point list or a strategy that covers everyone. So whenever I hear stuff like cannonball, I'm like, hey, well, what about these situations where we've got, people who just refuse to get on the diving board or walk up to the cliff or whatever, or, where failure is almost guaranteed and the cute students don't want to fail. How do you work around that? So I'm always just trying to come at it from all these different angles where, what if it doesn't work? Because I want it to work. I want what I'm doing to work. Yes, failure is great. And I'm really good at it.
But, aren't we all? I think that's awesome. But what about holding their hand? So, like, one of the things I talk about in Be Real book, I talk about, sometimes as the coach, you just have to hold their hand and you have to cannonball with them. And maybe you're not in the 15-foot deep end, but you're in the 8-foot deep end. And so you hold their hand, you cannonball off the side instead of the diving board, and then you go to the ladder, and then maybe you inch your way over into climbing the ladder with purpose, and then running and doing it. I think there are ways to engage everyone to eventually run and jump and get in. Mm-hmm. I do. I think everyone has that opportunity. It's how we motivate them and how we model for them that I think hopefully we'll bring them along. What age group do you work with, Shane?
Oh, I work with 12 to 18-year-olds, primarily 12 to 14, 15. So
yeah,
junior, I think you'd call that middle
age.
School. Sorry?
The middle school age then.
Yeah. Special time.
It's fun times, yeah.
Yeah. Well, hey, you mentioned Be Real, and I know you've got the hashtag Be Real, you've got a book, Be Real, and I think it's an acronym.
It is. So REAL is an acronym. REAL, the R stands for relatable. Mm-hmm. The E, expose vulnerability. The A, always approachable. And the L, learning through life. So you can see where my cannonball in theory kind of fits in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, okay, can I ask you a question? Sorry to read. So, REAL. Did you come up with strategies first and then say, hey, this spells real? Or are you like, real? What's gonna spell real for me? Like which way was it? I'm always curious when I see these things.
No, that's cool. So when I was a coach, I would always send out a performance survey at the middle of the year and at the end. And one of my open-ended responses for one of the teachers that I served said, she filled it all out. And of course said at the open-ended response, she said, Terry, you're just so real. I love that. I love that you're just so real. And it just stuck with me that was like one of my most favorite compliments. I'm like, man, in a world where there's fake everything, right? Fake news, fake people, fake friends, fake relatives, whatever, people are always turning on other people. But if they could just come at face value, like if all of us could just bring all of our strengths, talents, and experiences and just be the person that we were made to be, wouldn't that be awesome? And so I just kind of love the idea of real. And so I started my blog 2 years ago, and there was no question what I wanted to call it. I just wanted to call it Real, Be Real. And so I was like, what does that mean to me though? What does Be Real mean? What does what does it mean when people tell me that I'm real? And so I went from that angle. And that's when I thought, well, people always say, like, even looking over my performance surveys, people would always say, you're so relatable. Like, I feel like when I meet you, I feel like we're already friends. And even if the first time I meet you, so relatable. And I'm like, man, everyone could be relatable. We don't have to be best friends with people, but we can show ourselves relatable. Like, we can find some common interest, or we can at least be engaged in what they have to say and learn from others. And so exposing vulnerability was another piece that I think people really connect to. That's a piece that's kind of difficult, especially in our field, because we are looked upon by the people we serve to have it all together. But there are times when we don't. We just talked about learning can be messy, and it's okay to share that learning process with the people that we serve. And then approachable. I thought that's another thing that I think we could all do. Like, even with the people that don't like you the most, like the colleague that's just like, oh, I hate seeing you come in. Like, we can show ourselves approachable. We don't have to be ugly. We don't have to be malicious in our intent ever. We could just, roll with the punches and be approachable online or offline. And then the L was easy. I'm a learner by nature. So learning through life, I think no matter what you're doing, no matter how great things are looking for you, there's going to come a time when you're in the valley, and there's also going to come a time when you make mistakes. And so just documenting that. So I'm a journaler. So I would journal things and say, okay, if this exact situation happens again tomorrow, I think I'm going to try this because that was not so successful. So learning through life, always picking yourself up and carrying on and learning from our mistakes and trying something new.
That's the sound of me processing. Love it.
You're funny.
Oh, this is like, I can just suddenly see this. Okay, let's do R for an episode. Let's do E for an episode. Let's do A.
Hey,
there's a lot to unpack.
I could talk about this all day long.
Tara, I have no doubt.
Bless your heart.
Oh, that's awesome. No, it's awesome. You're clearly very passionate about all this stuff. Let's just crack into one. What's now, and I'll give you the option. Which one do you want to crack into? R, E, A, or L? They're all fascinating to me.
They're all fascinating to me too. So you choose.
Okay, let's do relatable. Relatable. That's one that's it's on my mind lately. Let's put it that way. So what does that look like?
So I think relatable. So if you're in the classroom working with your students, one of the things I worked inner city. So I worked in a school district where we were about 90% free and reduced lunch. And so a lot of kids just needed someone to relate to. They needed me to be their teacher. In some ways, they needed me to be their counselor, their mom, like lots of different roles. And I think all teachers experience this with students at one time or another.
Yeah.
But I had a classroom full of them. So I had to figure out, like, what is it that these kids are so passionate about? What makes them them? And so there were lots of ways that I would do this. In the mornings, I know that this is probably pretty common across the world, but in case it isn't, we had class meetings. So we had a 10-minute class meeting. And my first question, not only did I greet them at the door with hugs, high fives, or fist bumps, whatever they chose, we would go sit down and have class meeting on the floor where I taught third grade. And the first question I asked every single morning was, fist to 5, how did your morning go? And fist is like 0 is like the worst morning ever, that was the worst morning ever. And then fist to 5, sorry. Fist to 5. And then 5 was, it was better than chocolate, right? It's just like the best day ever. And so, right off the bat, I could tell fist to 5 how my kids were having their morning. Like who was going to need some extra love and who was I going to, like my behavior issues. I knew, like, they've started the morning off really rough. And so things are going to have to be like, I'm going to have to overcompensate to help them. So finding ways like that, everybody shut their eyes. They did fist to 5. It was pretty quick glance across the room gave me a really good feeling of like what the day was going to look like, or what I needed to overcompensate to make sure the day went smooth. And another thing that I found worked really well for me is just finding out what they love. I did a lot of passion surveys. And so I have some on my website too, some interest surveys for all different levels of kids. But finding out what is it that they love so much and incorporating that into our world, into our classroom. And once I would find out their interests, we had there's so many things. I'm just giving you a few strategies.
Oh, yeah,
One of the things we had was like our reading for purpose time. We had just a time where they could silently read. Well, some of my students couldn't read very well, and so we're in third grade. So I had students of all ranges. But what I would do is go to our public library. And I taught in a different city than I lived in, so I could go to both public libraries and I could check out 50 books. And what I would do is talk to the lady in the children's book area and say, here's my kid's interest. And I had like a long list of like dinosaurs, scientists, like all these things that they were so interested in, these random topics. And they would help me find books on all levels, with these random topics. And I would put those in my room. And so we had a librarian, one of the kids that would check them in and out. And they just had things that they were surrounded with that they were interested in. And so when it came to choosing passion projects, it was perfect because I kind of already knew. Or if we were reading about a scientist, I'm like, hey, Joey, I think you're going to love this story. So you're just always bringing in the things that connects to their heart. And I think without knowing those things, it's hard to like draw them in. It's hard to go off the cuff like that and say, oh my goodness, did you see that this is about dinosaurs? Like I heard you say you love dinosaurs, So random things like that. Another way I got to know the kids is bus duty and lunch duty. I loved that time because it was, free time that you could just talk about anything. And I had a little mailbox that sat on my desk and kids could write me a note, anything they wanted me to know. They could put it in there. And so I always took that to heart. I would, had a little slot so nobody could open the mailbox. Only I could open the mailbox. And I would check that mailbox every day. And it was interesting, the notes that kids wrote me, and they wanted me to know some different things about themselves. So just making yourself available. A new thing that I've come up with is real you snaps. And it's like book snaps, but basically kids just take a selfie with their iPad and they put emojis and and words that represent the things that they love. And then they upload them onto like a Padlet or a shared Google slide.
Yeah.
To where all their friends can see like, oh my gosh, you love pizza. I love pizza. Like you like going to the beach. I like going to the beach, so just learning some things about each other too, but relatable, finding ways to connect with others. And a lot of times it just comes from opening the opportunity for them to be able to share and truly listening to learn. Like you're not trying to give advice. You're just like taking it all in.
Yeah. Well, I think, ultimately what you're talking about, I mean, if we don't take the time to get to know our students like the way you're describing, I mean, ultimately we're a stranger and nobody wants to learn from a stranger. Nobody wants to talk to a stranger. So if you know a little bit about them, then that you're bridging that gap, and then it creates a relationship, and then from there, you can say, hey, let's learn some stuff. And here's a thing we can do. So no, I think that's a really, not even a great approach. It's a necessary approach. This is part of our job.
It works with adults too. As an administrator and as a coach, then adults became those that I served, and I had to learn about them. So I have this compass on my website. I call it the Real plus the Innovators Compass. And it basically walks you through a series of questions. You're starting with the people, like who are the people you serve? And you ask the teacher like that you're working with, who are the people that you value, that you serve, the people that mean the most to you? And they write down all these people, and you learn their kids' names, like everybody that's important to them. And then when you ask them, like you move around this compass. So when you move to the first quadrant, you ask them, what is your current reality personally and professionally? And I think when you're getting to know people, it's good to ask them personally and professionally questions, because I want them to tell me like, what are you thinking about? What's going on in your life? And then professionally, but also personally. Like, let me know a little bit about you. What is it that makes you feel like you rock the day? Because if I know what makes you feel like you rock the day and you're having a really crappy day, then I'm going to try to put some of those things into place. So it's just a series of questions that helps someone think about, what it is that makes them them. And they kind of share that. And you can literally ask these questions and have this conversation in 35 minutes and learn months worth of stuff that you may have never learned from them. And so I like doing stuff like, I think it all goes back to asking the right questions and learning from those that you serve. And then also taking that feedback and actually applying it. Because if you just know it, then it's not really relatable. But when you start applying it, like we talked about in the classroom earlier, then they know, like she actually cares about what I said,
Wow. Well, thank you so much. I feel like, as with so many of my guests, so we just sort of scratched the surface here, but this is some really great scratching that's been happening. But,
so fun.
Tara, if people want to get in touch with you, or want to read more about what you're doing, where can they find all that stuff?
Awesome. So you can find me on Twitter at Tara Martin EDU. You can also find, my resources and blogs and just about anything about me at my website, which is tarammartin.com. So it has an extra M in the middle. You can find me on Instagram at Tara M. Martin Real. And yeah, I would love to connect with you guys. So reach out to me. There are places on my website to directly message me. And then you can also directly message me on any of my social media platforms if you have questions about book snap. We didn't even talk about book snaps, but if you have questions about book snaps or Be Real the book or any of the resources, I have a ton of resources for being relatable, exposing vulnerability, always approachable, learning through life. I have resources you could use in your classroom. They're on my website. And if you just go to the book, when you go to book resources, you can find everything there.
Well, Tara, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. This has been a lot of fun, very enlightening.
Thank you, Shane. I appreciate you asking me to join you guys.
Absolutely. Well, you take care, and we'll see you out there.
Will do. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
This episode of Ed is fittingly brought to you by Back to School Again, podcast hosted by Katrina Ingram and sponsored by Norquest College. She interviews people who've returned to the classroom in midlife and chronicles her own journey as an adult who finds herself back in school. You'll also learn about the unique programs at Norquest College that help to provide learning opportunities for all. The episodes come out every 2 weeks, and if you want to know more or read the show notes, you can subscribe at backtoschoolagain.ca. And if you want to get in touch or you'd like to be a guest on the show, you can email me at theedpodcast@gmail.com or hit me up on Twitter at theedpodcast. If you want to listen to more of Ed, you can head over to the website, theedpodcast.podbean.com, or of course you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or the podcatcher of your choice. Just search up Ed Conversations. Ed is a proud member of the Alberta Podcast Network powered by ATB, and you can find this and all other member podcasts at albertapodcastnetwork.com. Ed can also be heard on Voice Ed Radio. It's 24-hour internet broadcasting devoted to the best ideas in education. Just head over to voiced.ca. So, on behalf of myself and Tara, thanks very much for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Bye.